Hey, it's Derek with Gold and Black Radio, and I just came from my local Academy Sports and Outdoors store. The most festive gear of the year is back, guys, at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Don't miss the limited edition Magellan Outdoor Christmas Market Collection only at Academy. Get exclusive 2025 gear and gifts for all your holiday parties, fun family photos, and Christmas morning traditions. Check out the entire collection, from matching PJs and holiday print fishing shirts and dresses to exclusive new Mossy Oak Snowdrift camo styles and more. Shop in-store or at academy.com. Need it fast? Get same-day delivery powered by DoorDash. Let your holiday fun begin with Magellan Outdoors Christmas Market Collection only at Academy.
Welcome into a Halloween edition of Gold and Black Radio, presented by our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm Derek Schultz. I know I'm wearing yellow and not orange, but we're doing the fun orange name tags for everybody on the show today. I know Brian Neubert's going to be a huge fan coming up later on. He's not going to be snarky about that at all. Unfortunately, the most frightening thing around Boilermaker football right now is this November slate, which starts tomorrow at the Big House against Michigan. It includes a road trip to Seattle to face Washington, and everybody knows they've got the current number one defending champion Ohio State Buckeyes and the number two hated rival Indiana Hoosiers that are also part of that schedule coming up this month. We'll talk Boilers and Wolverines in this daunting stretch here in just a few minutes with our resident football experts, goldenblack.com's Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison. But first, Gold and Black Radio is brought to you by Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn. This Midwestern oasis is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. By Sand Valley Resort, as the seasons change, escape to Sand Valley. Over 12,000 acres of prehistoric sand dunes transform into a breathtaking winter retreat. You can glide through snow-covered trails, feel the thrill of fat tire biking, or simply find stillness by a crackling fire. With cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining, Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research. The Purdue Institute for Cancer Research has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's bring on Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison. Like I mentioned, our football writers / experts / Halloween fans, guys. Are we good with Halloween? We like Halloween. I know some people are anti-Halloween. My wife and I have gotten really into. We put skeletons up and they like wave to the neighbors, and we do all kinds of the kitschy crap like that. Are you guys into either of you into that?
I like it. I don't have a lot of decorations. I'm sure Dub does, though. What do you got, Dub?
Yeah, I went back and forth on it when I was growing up, but I've grown to like it a little bit more. This year, I'm going to be a bunny from the movie Chandler from Friends. I'm kind of curious to know your guys' favorite Halloween costumes from when you were younger, though.
Man, favorite Halloween costumes. This is Tom's gonna get this reference. I have a feeling, Dub, you're not. So they re-released Dick Tracy with Warren Beatty and Madonna in like 1990, and I was 7 years old. And I got a yellow coat. I was obsessed with Dick Tracy and like the watch that you could talk into, because we all have them now, right? But in 1990, technology like this was just incredible. So I had my Dick Tracy watch, I had my Dick Tracy yellow button-up suit, and a little red cap gun when they still let kids have toy guns. And that was my favorite Halloween ever. My mom still has that picture, I think, framed somewhere. What about you, Tom?
Dick Tracy. I think mine was probably going as Frankenstein. I was a kid who loved I love monsters. I bought all the models with the Wolfman, Dracula, the Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, Godzilla. So I was really into that. And Frankenstein, of course, he's the top of the food chain when it comes to monsters. So he had a little light. I remember at the top of his forehead, you could press a button, this light would go on. So for me, it was Frankenstein, the old classic.
It was the pegs in the neck that always kind of creeped me out with the Frankenstein. Speaking of monsters, this November slate is a monster. And after a winless November, needless to say, this slate of opponents is not what the doctor ordered for a Purdue team that's really struggling to find its way. Tom, do you believe Purdue can still make some progress and at the very least be competitive, not only tomorrow night, but for these remaining 4 games on the slate?
Yeah, that's a schedule coming up that would buckle the knees of even Nick Saban, I think. And you know what, Derek? This is a good Michigan team. It's not a great Michigan team. This is a Michigan team, I think, if Purdue's clicking, maybe they can hang with them. Very good defensively, But there's some issues on offense. They really struggle. They really got basic last week in East Lansing when they beat the Spartans. They only threw 2 passes in the second half. Bryce Underwood's talented, but he's still kind of a work in progress as a passer. So I think if Purdue can somehow slow down Michigan's ground game, get after Underwood, I think there's a chance maybe they can make this a ball game into the second half. It's going to be tough. I'd feel better about it if it was in West Lafayette, but of all the 4 games left, this may be one where Purdue has a chance maybe to hang for a little bit at least.
Yeah, and Dub, it will be a tall task tomorrow. One thing that Michigan is good at is they're good in the trenches. They have one of the best run defenses in the entire country, and we saw Purdue really have trouble matching up in games where they were out physical. USC, just even from a personnel standpoint, like walking on the field during warmups, you're thinking to yourself, okay, they're going to have a hard time against USC and against Notre Dame. Is that again a concern tomorrow?
Absolutely. The times where Purdue's run the ball well and kind of held up well up front, it's been against teams where you would kind of expect that. Ball State and Southern Illinois, obviously, to kick off the year. And then they ran the ball well against Minnesota, ran the ball well against Illinois, ran the ball well last week. So it all came against teams that don't have those scary fronts. And Michigan certainly has a scary front. That those Michigan teams or these Michigan teams are always tried to be built in the trenches. So you would have to assume they have the upper hand there, and that's something that's going to be something that Josh Henson's got to contend with on the offensive side of the ball, and something that I'm not sure that Purdue can overcome. If Ryan Brown's back there starting, which I would anticipate he is, it might be another week of him running for his life. So Purdue's got their work cut out for him. Like Tom said, Michigan's ceiling offensively, I think, gives Purdue a chance, a puncher's chance. But it's hard to go up in Ann Arbor expecting a win.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about the quarterback spot and the health situation with Ryan Brown, Tom. Are we going to see a healthier Ryan Brown? And regardless, even if Brown plays, are we going to continue to see Malachi Singleton sprinkled in? Did Barry Odom allude to either of those things this week?
Yeah, Josh Henson did. For sure, we're going to continue to see Malachi Singleton. In what dosage, we'll have to wait and see. As far as the health of Ryan Brown, I have no reason to think it's diminished at all from last week. He did wear a brace on his left shoulder, the non-throwing shoulder that he hurt up in Evanston. I think it had to affect him a little bit. I wonder if he really was 100%. And again, I'm not sure. No reason to think he's not going to be the guy this week. I think the guy that we're kind of keeping an eye on is number 45, Devin Mockabee. He left last week's game, kind of gimping off the field, and how healthy is he going to be this week? I think that's the one we have circled as far as injuries go. And I kind of think, Derek, maybe this is the week we finally see Denylon Morissette make his debut, his 2025 debut. If it is, that'd be a heck of a boon for the Boilermakers.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Dub, you're at practices, you're around the team, you talk to the coaches. What would you say the temperature has been here? We saw last year's team sort of sink into like almost a despondence, and really outside of the Northwestern game, there haven't been a lot of games where Purdue's just been completely outclassed. But what would you say the spirits are around this squad right now entering the final month?
Yeah, I think they're motivated still. I think in talking to Barry Odom, his tone has been dialed back a little bit. It's just in the way he talks to us, at least. You can tell it's kind of wearing on him a little bit. But he's still, bought into his process and his plan of getting Purdue back on track. So I don't. It's nowhere near last year, right? I think last year is something that I've never seen, and hopefully I don't ever have to see again, because that was brutal. But I think they're still hopeful for the future, because this is Barry Odom's first year, obviously, and you knew it was going to be an uphill battle when he took the job. So I think Purdue fans wanted to see more progress in the win-loss column, but it doesn't appear like we'll see that. So I think Purdue's trying to build for the future, and that's kind of where Barry Odom's mindset is. And in my opinion, I know he's kind of talked about wanting to win now and kind of reiterating that, just like he did when he first got the job. But I think overall, they're still motivated and they're still hungry.
Yeah, uphill climb is even an understatement, right? I mean, I think we all know, and I think Barry Odom must have known what he ended up signing up for. But I thought it was interesting, Tom, that Coach Odom said earlier this week he's gotten everything that he's needed and from the athletic administration to compete, and really kind of putting it all on his shoulders, the results and everything that's happened so far this year. But are you worried that in this new world, traditionally speaking, 5 to 10 years ago, we would be like, okay, you're in year one, and now – yeah, if you're competitive, you build some momentum and then you roll back the next group, right? Because they're all underclassmen and they're coming back because that's what it used to be. And now it's, well, even if, like, let's say they are competitive against Michigan. Hell, let's say they surprise the world and they actually win one of these games. If you're going to lose 50 or 60 guys again, then you're kind of in the same boat. Am I right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's the conundrum for Purdue. And that, I think it causes some angst for the fans, right? Should they get excited? Who's going to be back? Can Purdue retain the players that they want to retain? They've yet to really prove that to anybody in this new era. They haven't really retained their top talent. Devin Mockabee stayed, of course, but he was never really going to leave, I don't think. And then Kydron Jenkins stayed. Otherwise, the last couple of years, the best players have left. So again, that I think that's going to have to be proof number one. Can you retain the talent you want to retain? And then can you bring in difference makers? Is it scheme? Is it coaching? Is it talent? Well, what is it, guys? Scheme, coaching, or talent? I still wonder the level of talent, the level of player that they brought in, or if indeed it was good enough. So we're going to have all off season to debate a lot of this. And, like you said, Derek, in the post-game aftermath last week, Coach Odom went out of his way, unsolicited, to say what you reiterated, that Mike Bobinski and Tiffany Grimes have given him everything he needs to succeed. I think he was trying to take some pressure off his bosses, honestly. Anybody who follows this program knows there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of questions about at the top here, at the top of the food chain, as far as our resources really being devoted to the program. I think some of Barry Odom's words were directed to try to, again, take that heat off. So a lot going on here, guys. You're 2-17 in your last 19 games. You lost 14 Big Ten games in a row. Haven't won a Big Ten road game since 2022. Coming up on your 1 year in, 2023 for the last Big Ten win. On and on it goes, the dreary stats. And, and then the way you lose last week and you go 0 for October, and then what's going on in Bloomington. And it's just the perfect storm right now, a perfect bad storm for Purdue. So, maybe they said, Derek, they can shock the world and get a win here in November. We shall see, but it's a steep hill for the Boilermakers to climb. We all get it.
Yeah, and Dub, I know it's been a lot of doom and gloom since October, and rightfully so, right? We're not here on this show to say that everything is, roses and sugar plums and candy cane houses and the whole deal, right? That's a fantasy. That's Purdue football is not living in a fantasy world right now. But just closing on a more positive note, who are some individuals that you think have made the most of the opportunity here over the last couple of weeks and really brought it consistently that have stood out to you for this Purdue team, albeit in losing efforts?
There's quite a few because, we talk about it every week. Purdue has bright spots every week and guys that play well. I've been impressed with Malachi Thomas and Antonio Harris when they've had their numbers called, obviously last week. Malachi Thomas had he almost matched his total in terms of yards in those first two drives when he was in. So those two have really impressed me. Ian Jeffries and not Cole Brevard, Jamarian Harkless. Those two guys have impressed me up front in the middle of that Purdue defense. Smiley Bradford has really emerged, I think, as a guy that's trusted in that secondary and a guy that they can kind of build around and then have for a few more years at that nickel spot. So Purdue has, they have a decent core, I think. And the one thing to remember about this team is this current sophomore class is it has a lot of talent in it. You go down the line, Charles Correa, Joey Tonona, Smiley Bradford, Ryan Brown. We can go on and on about all the guys that are in that class. And this is the class that I think Purdue is going to have to build around and the one that they're going to have to develop moving forward. And I think they've seen a lot of really good signs from that group.
Follow Tom and Dub all season long. The best football and recruiting coverage of the Purdue Boilermakers on the internet. At Tom Dienhart1, at Dub Jellison on X, and right here at goldenblack.com. No roundtable tonight, guys, as we'll do an extended hoop segment coming up here with Brian Neubert later, but we'll hear from you guys on the post-game show. Hopefully not too late tomorrow night. Going to be a cold one in Ann Arbor, Tom, so bring that big, heavy winter jacket.
I'll be bundled up with my toque and my parka. And for sure, try to stay as warm as I can, Derek.
You're a vet. You know how it goes. Thanks so much, guys.
You bet. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
It's Tom Dienhart and Dub Jellison. And this portion of Gold and Black Radio brought to you by our friends at East End Grill and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. And also by our friends at BetMGM. In fact, here's a word from them. Hey, college football fans, it's time to lock in on those Saturday showdowns with BetMGM. Whether you're betting the underdog or riding with the favorite, take your excitement to the next level with a college football odds boost token. Log into your BetMGM account to receive your token. Then place a bet on any college football matchup with your activated token. If your boosted bet hits, you'll score a bigger payout. Claim your odds boost token and be sure to activate it before placing your bet. The game is about to kick off, so feel the rush and own the moment. BetMGM, make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Tom had the chance earlier this week to talk to Doug Karsch, the voice of Michigan football, for a conversation about Saturday's game at the Big House between the Wolverines and the Boilermakers. And here's our opponent preview for week number 9.
All right, here to talk some Purdue football. Of course, the Boilermakers heading north to the Big House to take on the mighty Michigan Wolverines. To join us today, the voice of Michigan football, Doug Karsch. Thank you very much for joining us, dropping some Wolverine knowledge on us. Let's jump right in. Tell our viewers and listeners what they can expect from the Michigan defense on Saturday. Or I should say the Michigan offense on Saturday.
Okay. Well, they've really started to run the ball the way Sharon Moore wants to run the ball. If you remember back in the 2023 season when they had won the national championship and ran the table, they were very much a run-oriented team. Sharon believes his theory is smash, and offensive linemen love it, running backs love it. And fans don't always love it, but it's funny. You look back at the Michigan State game, they only threw the ball twice in the second half. A third pass play was a play that ended in a penalty at Michigan State where the Spartans sacked Bryce Underwood. He fumbled and MSU recovered, but the guy blitzed was called off sides. So, and then in the second half, they scored 21 points. Almost exclusively running the football. In the first half, when they were trying to be more diverse, they scored 10 points. So they're just finding ways to win football games with a freshman quarterback. If you look at the makeup of their offense, I think it's a vulnerability that can't be avoided. They have 5 and sometimes and oftentimes 6 freshman eligible players playing offense. 3 on the offensive line, the true freshman quarterback. Their most dangerous wide receiver is a true freshman, and Jordan Marshall, the running back, when he's in there, that gives him 6, and he's a redshirt freshman. So there's a lot of youth there and a lot of variability from week to week. Veteran teams, you kind of know what you're getting with a group with this many freshmen offensively. It's a challenge. And then when you have a freshman quarterback who doesn't, hasn't been around as much and doesn't have the experience, you see plays that can turn into disasters quickly. So, they're trying to coddle them through this and score enough points and hope that the defense supports them. But I think you're going to see a typical Michigan rushing attack. Now, they've started to make some plays on the outside. Andrew Marsh, the true freshman, number 4, you'll see this weekend, has turned out to be very explosive. He came on the Wisconsin week. Sharon Moore says it's usually between week 7 and week 9 that the true freshman can make an impact, and he's really, really stepped up and has probably emerged as their most dangerous receiver in the last few weeks. Donovan McCulley, you may remember from down the road, the quarterback from Indiana, is a good receiver, a guy that can go get the ball. He can win the 50-50 balls, but they don't have a lot of depth there. And so, those are kind of their 2 guys. You mix in, The tight end position, which has been a little bit of feast or famine, they've had a lot of injuries there. Hasn't been the greatest Michigan offense, but when you have that many young players, I don't know if you could expect them to be that great. But you can see the talent with Bryce Underwood. He's a dual threat guy. He's got an extremely strong arm. The best of Bryce Underwood was on display against Washington, and he could have been 25 of 27 on that day, but there were 4 drop passes. You look at the Michigan State game, he wasn't nearly as efficient, but you can see the talent is there, and they're hoping that the best performances start to stack on top of one another, and they can raise the baseline and maybe give them a little bit more to work with.
Yeah, physical offense, just like their head coach, a former offensive lineman, going to be hard to handle for Purdue, Doug. Tell our viewers and listeners what they can expect from the Michigan defense.
Well, this is the strength of the team. They got a lot of depth at a lot of different positions, although that depth is getting tested. You could make a case that their best defensive back and their best linebacker didn't play in the Michigan State game. Rod Moore, the fifth-year senior safety who has always been like the coach in the secondary, and Cole Sullivan, a young linebacker who's been coming on, left early in the Michigan State game. His status at this point is unknown. Rod Moore, tore his ACL prior to last season, and the comeback has been slow. So, he's been in and out of the lineup. We'll see if he plays on Saturday, but the defensive front, they have defensive tackles. They're not Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, but they're very, very good at collapsing the pocket and stuffing the run. The edge rushers, Jayshawn Barham and Derek Moore, have been very good. Jimmy Rolder was the best player on the field, the linebacker against Michigan State. He's a guy that's finally healthy. He was a former Illinois baseball commit that eventually decided to play football. And in the secondary, Jair Hill, while he has had the ball in his hands and could have had pick sixes against both Washington and Michigan State, he's dropped them, but he's there to make plays. His coverage has been really good. So they like their secondary. It's very young. Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator, calls it a playpen back there. So they got some youth, but the defense is a strength. If you look at what the defense has done against quarterback threats the last couple of weeks, they got shredded by USC. It looked like a Rich Rod defense. But then they get into the Washington game. Damon Williams, who tore up Rutgers and then tore up Illinois last Saturday, they held him in check against Michigan. Aiden Childs gave Indiana's defense all kinds of problems when Michigan State went to Bloomington 2 weeks ago, and then Michigan held him in check. They've done a very good job defensively, and they're kind of carrying the team, and I think they're trying to play to that strength. Punt and play defense and take advantage of any opportunities that your offense can scrounge up in the course of a game.
Yeah, Doug, this is a Purdue offense that's struggling right now, to put it mildly. So it's going to be a handful for the Boilermaker attack to find some traction, but we shall see. Now the big finish, Doug. Tell us how you see this game unfolding when it kicks off 7 p.m. Eastern time on BTN.
Yeah, so another night game, huh? Fired up for that. I'm sure you are. Because of the youth, I don't really think Michigan's going to run away and hide from a lot of people. You're susceptible to letdowns more so. And I think a lot of teams come into the big house where they're so tuned in that it wouldn't shock me if this game is closer than the experts think. I saw the Purdue game. I watched some of it from the Rutgers last week, off to a good start, and then things kind of unraveled. And I listened to Barry Odom this week, who was giving you a hard time for some reason over a question you asked about the November schedule.
He likes to rip me.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if this game is a little bit closer than people think. I expect Michigan to win the game, but I've gotten used to not knowing what to expect out of the Michigan offense. They're a little bit banged up. We'll see who can play on Saturday. But I like Michigan to win the game, maybe by a couple scores.
Yeah, they're favored by 21 last I checked. So we'll see if Purdue can make this a game or not. Tough November begins with the trip, like I said, to the big house. Then they get Ohio State, and they go to Washington, and they finish with Indiana. How about that? So they got their work cut out for them. But Doug, Barry Odom's going to take them one at a time.
He was very clear. He was very clear with you. I was giggling a little bit. I wondered if there was some history there between you two.
But yeah, I appreciate you coming by. I'll look for you in the press box. Always a fun making the trek up north. A great venue, a great city, one of the best cities in the Big Ten, I think, Doug. Thank you very much for giving us some of your time, sir.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Doug Karsh for joining Tom. And man, what a voice. Cool thing about Tom is that his Rolodex, when it comes to the voice of these teams, a lot of times, more often than not, for the opponent preview, it's whoever is the play-by-play voice for the team. So they all have great voices, right? You have to be a play-by-play guy. But Doug Karsh, man, that is a really, really great play-by-play voice. Let's hope it's a great result for the Boilermakers in Ann Arbor. It's going to be a cold one under the lights up at the Big House. Temps expected to dip near freezing, but I'll let the expert take over. Chad Evans has your latest forecast for this week.
Hi, everyone. Meteorologist Chad Evans here with a look at your forecast for Saturday. Purdue versus Michigan up in Ann Arbor. Kickoff is at 7 p.m. Just a few little spotty showers around for the game. About 20 to 30% coverage, but it's going to be chilly and blustery. Wind's pretty stiff out of the west-northwest at 15 to about 26 miles an hour. And temperatures only around 41 to start the game, that is, and around 38 at halftime and around 38 as well at the end of the game. So bundle up, going to be a cool one, and you may have to dodge a few of those little spotty showers. Boiler up.
November football, that's what you get, especially when you go up north like that to Michigan. So should be an interesting one under the lights at the Big House, one of the most iconic venues in all of college football. This portion of Golden Black Radio brought to you by our friends at Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. Let's bring on Alan Karpick to talk a little bit about that Purdue history in the Big House with our historical perspective on this matchup between Purdue and Michigan. But Alan, I wanted to start here because I did it with Tom and Dub earlier. It just happens to fall on Halloween, right? Our Friday edition of the show. I even did the orange for the
you're good
here. I'm trying to be as festive as possible. Are you a Halloween guy, or is it not a big deal in the Karpick house?
Well, I'm dressed up as an old man, so there you go, and I'm good to go. Now, it's funny, in our neighborhood we don't get many Halloweeners. We did in our old neighborhood, but it's a cool thing, and it's amazing how big Halloween is to the younger set, even younger than you. I have a 28 and 30-year-old, and they're all geeked up for parties. I think there's got some other things to do with it, but it's a lot of fun. But yes, it'll be the day after Halloween by the time that the Boilermakers take on Michigan at the Big House.
Yeah, I think the millennials are the ones that have really kind of taken over. And I'm an older millennial.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, we did the costume parties and all of that. It's a really big deal to a lot of people in their 30s and maybe very early 40s.
Yeah.
Not a great history for Purdue in the Big House, to say the least. I know we're going to talk Big Ten losing skids here. And the losing skid, to be fair, only dates back to the 2009 season, right? Because they won back-to-back games against Rich Rod, and including one in Ann Arbor. Really weird year. They beat Ohio State and Michigan, but went 5-6. That 2009 team. But I know, I think it goes all the way back to the 1960s, right? For their last previous win before then.
Right. You think about this. Purdue has won 5 times in the Big House, and yet they won 4 consecutive times from 1963 to 1966, and then didn't win again until 2009, the game you're talking about with Ralph Bolden and Danny Hope and all that. Bob Greasy was 3-0 in the Big House. They won 3 games by a total of 5 points. And certainly Purdue's first Rose Bowl trip was predicated a lot on that win in the Big House in 1966, 22-21. A 28-year-old defensive end who was a Vietnam War vet comes in, blocks a punt. Purdue wins that game. They won 3 in a row. Like I said, Michigan wasn't the Michigan that we know today. Back they were playing in front of crowds of 65,000 in those days. But my point is, it's been few and far between in the Big House, and even some of the best Purdue teams, 1978, 1980, go up there with chances to win a chair of the Big Ten championship and get drubbed by Michigan. Not surprising. The Wolverines have had great success there, and certainly great success against Purdue.
There are some very random upsets that are sprinkled in there, though, and some big ones. You talk about Jim Coletto's last year in '96. They played a top 10 Michigan team and won 9-3 or something.
9-3.
And then you mentioned the dominance in the 60s. In '64, that was Michigan's only loss. They won the Rose Bowl, finished number 3 or number 4 in the country, and their only loss was Purdue.
Yeah, it is. It's quirky, and if you're a Purdue fan, you have to hope that can work that way. The 1996, and you can relate this to James' birth, but that was my daughter, got born 3 days later, and that 9-3 game, Brian Alford, Purdue was not a good, well, Jim Coletto had already resigned the week before. They go and beat Michigan. Brian Alford gets a touchdown pass from Rick Trefsker, and Purdue hangs on to win that game. And in that series, probably no bigger upset in a lot of ways is 1976, a game in Ross-Ade Stadium. Bo Schembechler, the storied coach at Michigan, his greatest chance to win a national championship arguably was in the 76 season. Purdue upsets them in Ross-Ade 16-14. A shocking game. Purdue nearly a 30-point underdog in that game, and they win that game. So yeah, anything can happen. I'm not expecting that tomorrow night, but anything can happen, and that's the fun part of playing college football.
The beauty of these conversations is that it feels like we can always find something that Purdue has done in their long history that, nothing ever surprises you. I would assume there's never been a time where they've lost 18 straight Big Ten games, right?
They have not. I think you have to, sadly for Purdue, you go back to Northwestern in the days of the late 70s and early 80s to starting to search for a losing streak as long. And this challenging thing for Purdue is that streak is not likely to end before the end of the 2025 season. And that is what it is. But Barry Odom and company would love to have gotten off the schneid either against Rutgers or Minnesota. It didn't happen. And now you're going to be, I think, a combined, some odds maker told us that in the next 4 games for Purdue will be a combined over 100-point underdog if you take into that in those 4 games. Now they're only 21 against Michigan, but look for Ohio State and Indiana to be in that 29-30 range, and Washington will be no walk in the park for Purdue on November 15th. So that's what they're up against. I think Barry Odom and company accept that and that challenge, and hope that you can go out and measure. You're going to measure success, and you guys have talked about this already. There may be a different way of measuring that, but you got to figure out where your roster is, and you got to go compete, and we'll see if they can do that.
Yeah, it's at 14 now, and if they lose out in November, obviously it'll go up to 18, which, as Alan said, you got to go all the way back to those Northwestern teams. Let's talk about something positive on the way out. This is what I did with Tom and Dub, too, but Devin Mockabee, only a handful of yards away from 3,000 for his career. I honestly have no idea where he stacks up. I don't think I even know who Purdue's all-time leading rusher is. Is it Leroy Keys?
No, it's Mike Allstott.
It is Mike Allstott. Okay.
Allstott still holds the record. And that's an interesting discussion because Purdue's hasn't had a ton of great running backs. Certainly Mike Allstott, Otis Armstrong was the last consensus All-American in 1972. Leroy Keys, who was kind of a slot back, but certainly ran the football and did have 1,000 yards one year. But my point is Devin Mockabee, partly because of his whole body of work, is certainly in that top 5 range, and partly because of what he stands for too. The fact in today's world, he stayed at Purdue and hung in there and has overcome some challenges, overcome fumble problems one year and injuries and others, and yet continues to compete at a high level. So, I don't know that I would rank him. If you ask, Otis Armstrong and Leroy Keys were both All-American level players. Mike Allstott was a great pro and was a very, very good college running back, and told that, not highly recruited, obviously came to Purdue out of Chicago. But Devin Mockabee, from a soul standpoint, you can't help it. You're not going to mitigate. You're not going to lower what he's meant to Purdue, because even in the most difficult of times, this guy is giving great effort and has been pretty productive. He had a good game last week. We always keep talking about how we'd like to give him the ball more. I'm not even sure whether that situation is possible sometimes, but he's been a tremendous asset to Purdue football. And if there's anything positive that's come out of the last 2 or 3 years, it's Devin Mockabee.
Yeah, it's funny because, obviously I think people, Mike Allstott was such a great NFL player that I think people connect him with Purdue. So to have him, even though it's a fairly, I think I just looked at the list and Corey Sheets is number 2, and no offense to Corey Sheets, but who besides Purdue fans is going to think of Corey Sheets as the second all-time leading rusher, right? I looked just for kicks at their all-time leading receivers, and I couldn't believe it's still John Staniford, isn't it?
Yeah. It's incredible, Brian. There have been some good ones, but Purdue has not been blessed with superstar receivers. And think about this. Mike Allstott is the only Purdue football player to score a touchdown in the Rose Bowl. in the Super Bowl. And that's an interesting thing as well. But Mike Allstott was a tremendous, and again, played during a problematic time, not as difficult as it's been lately. But, his years as a standout, mostly from 92 to 95, Purdue was did not have a winning season, did not get to a bowl game, but it was that constant effort that he brought. That's where he's similar to Devin Mockabee. No matter what, that effort, that attitude, that effort was there, and that's why he will for Mike Allstott and Devin Mockabee will forever be on the high list of Purdue fans because of that effort.
Last thing, Alan, I don't know how many of the other Big Ten venues you've gotten to go to, or if you've frequented any. Have you been to the Big House? Where is it on your list as far as the favorite? Just as an opposing fan visiting for a game.
Well, it's never been my, I'm not responsible for how Purdue plays in these events. I always say in Assembly Hall in basketball, I'm 0-11. So I've chosen not to go back. Yeah. That has nothing to do with Purdue. I know that, but I've seen Purdue leading in the last minute in Assembly Hall and lose. So in the Big House, I have seen 4 Purdue games, and Purdue has been outscored 110-6. So it's not me. I know it's not, but it's a great venue. It's phenomenal. I sat next to Bob Seger in one game. Didn't know it till they announced it. I looked down the thing. Purdue's getting in a very good Purdue team under Mark Herman, I think 1978 or 1980. I can't remember. And looked down. They say, "Hey, Bob Seger's in the crowd." Looked down. He's sitting right next to me. I said, I wasn't smart enough to get his autograph, but how cool was that? Purdue still gets beat. It's a great venue. It's a great avenue. My favorite place probably is Wisconsin, but I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to beat the Big House, and when you go there, it's big time football, and their fans are what they are. They expect to win. All the big time venues in the league, Ohio State the same way. When that band comes out, I don't care who you are. You're a Purdue person or whatever you are. You're going to get chills when you hear "Hail to the Victors" or across the field or at Notre Dame. And that's just the reality of the beauty of college football, but that's what it's about. I think I don't get the same chills in Indiana when the Marching 100 comes out, but I also respect that it's, that's the big deal there too now. And that's the great thing that is about college football.
Yeah, I really like Camp Randall too, but I'll be honest, as much as they've laid it on Purdue lately, I was not heartbroken to see that Iowa score, and I'd imagine that was about the saddest jump around that they've ever had in the history of that building.
I'm sure, and I've seen Purdue win in Camp Randall, but it's been a while, and a great venue, great.
Yeah, it's a great town.
Yeah, it is, and that's what makes the Big Ten special. I mean, the Big Ten, the SEC have got some of these great venues, and that's what you celebrate. And yes, it's the night game in the Big House, and Purdue's going to be a Purdue underdog, but it's still the lights are on. It's a big time venue. It doesn't get much better in college football.
Alan will lead Golden Black's post-game coverage after every game this season, so check out those shows on many of these same platforms, and he'll be with you late night on Saturday for Purdue and Michigan under the lights in Ann Arbor. Thanks so much, Alan, and we'll look for you at the post-game show.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much, Derek.
That's Alan Karpick, the publisher of GoldenBlack.com. This portion of GBR brought to you by Sand Valley Resort with cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining. Speaking of Wisconsin, Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And our great friends at the Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Another great friend of the show and the GoldenBlack.com family is columnist and basketball knower Brian Neubert, who joins us now. I got a feeling that you're either strongly on one side or the other side here. You're not much of a fence sitter to me, Brian. Whenever I ask you a question, I feel like you've got a firm take on it. The Neuberts, Halloween household, not Halloween household?
We are a Halloween household.
Okay.
It's kind of up to the dog, though, from here on out. So not really our decision to make anymore. But we are costumes and all that. We are a Halloween house. We do have the best candy. Obviously, only the finer things for the children in our area. So yes, we are a trick or treater friendly household until we get old and bitter and go outside with broomsticks to chase kids away. And I have a joke that I use every Halloween, and right around 8:30 p.m., the kids stop being kids, right? They start being young adults, and I take no greater pleasure than answering the door and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to need to see some ID." You got to entertain yourself, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. They do. StreamYard does have a dancing skeleton here. Let me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, look at that. All right, we'll leave that up for the rest of it. One last thing before we get to Purdue basketball, because I know that's what people tune into here. He's just standing there. Yeah. Do you know what Mischief Night is? I think some people in Jersey called it Cabbage Night.
Cabbage Night. It's called Cabbage Night in New Jersey. I don't know what it was in Connecticut, but
it was Mischief Night.
Mischief Night. That's lame.
I heard
that's
Cabbage
just a little
Night
too
too.
straightforward.
Well,
there has to be some mystery involved. Like, I wonder what the cabbage has to do with this.
Our listeners in Indiana have no clue what we're talking about. But
we called it Cabbage Night.
The night before Halloween in the Northeast, in Connecticut and Jersey, and I think Michigan people might have done it like Devil's Night or something. I had one college buddy that said that he had heard of it, and you go and like do stupid stuff like smash pumpkins and things like that. So I don't condone it. I'm just saying. I knew Brian would have heard of it because he and I come from the same region of the country.
Shaving cream, toilet paper, eggs.
Yep.
Chasing younger kids with your cars when you're old enough to have cars.
Petty vandalism, anything really that sort of fell into that category. Mm-hmm. Purdue grabbed a win in their exhibition against UIndy, moving on as quickly as possible before we incriminate ourselves. Again, exhibition here, a.k.a. they don't count, but this 2-game sample is what we have to go on, at least for now, for the 25-26 Boilermakers. How do you feel about where the Boilers were in these 2 games, even if they were approaching them as the exhibition games that they were? I mean, I think we knew that, this is not, you're going out and playing Alabama and Tuscaloosa. It's just not the same ramp up level.
Yeah, no, I think from here on out, you see a higher level of structure. You see a higher level of preparation. You presumably see a higher level of effort and urgency. I think you see a higher competitive gear. I'm not saying Purdue spun its wheels at all, but from a defensive perspective, they've not been very good at what they need to be very good at. And that's just man-to-man, stay in front of the basketball kind of thing. Their help structure really hasn't been evident yet. There probably hasn't been any, but there are general rules. And I think Purdue's been very rough around the edges from a dribble containment perspective. It's been a huge emphasis. It's always a huge emphasis at Purdue, but it's been an even huger emphasis since the end of last season, all through the summer into this preseason practice. And I'm not sure any payout has really shown up yet. I think when you looked at last night's game, you saw Oscar Clough get in foul trouble. You saw Daniel Jacobson get in foul trouble. I think that was more to do with anything than those guys being exposed to foul trouble, because perimeter guys were giving up straight line drives to the basket, and the centers were having to confront them at the basket, and that's not ideal. And I said last night after the game on my little video that, people always thought there was some grand Illuminati conspiracy to protect Zach-Edey from fouls, which would have not made any sense whatsoever. But the reality was Purdue's defensive structure and Zach-Edey's uncanny ability to not foul. He was extraordinary at not fouling. But Purdue set up its whole defense to protect its center from fouling. They double team the post always. They didn't at Kentucky, so that was a pretty big tell on how in-depth they built their system for that game. But they built a lot of help into their defensive system to try to contain the dribble in order to protect their big guys. And I don't think you've seen the most important part of that materialize yet, and that's simply the guy on the ball keeping the ball in front of him. And Purdue's got to get better at that. And I think that there's nowhere to go but up there. And I think that Purdue will kind of find another gear here once the games matter. And but what these exhibitions are for are building good habits. And so that's where it's a little bit, iffy. But I also don't think it's a reality. I think Purdue's not going to be a great dribble containment team, but I think they're going to be better than the rough around the edges performances you've seen so far.
With so much attention on the senior class, and rightfully so, it's one of the great senior classes, certainly the best senior class in college basketball and one of the great in Purdue history. But, you had the portal additions as well that both came with a lot of fanfare. I've had to kind of remind myself about Jakari Harris and CJ Cox, like, oh yeah, like those guys. And they're both really good basketball players. And you had particularly highlighted Harris's first half against UIndy last night. I don't remember exactly what the stats are, but there was a stretch where he scored 8 straight points by himself. What kind of strides has he made? And, you've been around the entire summer and you've talked to the coaches and what have they had to say about Jakari?
Well, that was a super important stretch too. I mean, it was an exhibition game. Purdue wasn't losing no matter what. But if you remember that sequence, Indianapolis got within 10 with a minute and a half, I think, to go in the first half. Matt Painter takes Braden Smith out of the game. It was a classic moment of figure it out, guys. Something you only do in exhibition games. And Jakari Harris ended the half on a personal 8-0 run to push that back to 18. Again, Indianapolis could have got that down to 5 or something like that at halftime, and they're still not winning that game. But nevertheless, that was a moment where, Painter kind of deputized somebody else to step up and change that game back in Purdue's favor. And it was Jakari Harris who did it. And you're seeing a guy who just is unbelievably confident right now. You see him coming off handoffs, ready to shoot. Whereas I don't think he was doing that last year. And once he got to that slump in January, that horrible slump, that shooting slump he was in the winter, remember he shot 40+% from 3-point range from January 1st on, and he's picked right up where he left off. And I think he is he's just playing with a lot of confidence right now. He's playing with a lot of knowledge. He's a more experienced guy than he was before. Obviously, the chronological passage of time does that for us. But no, he's just another great example of players make their biggest jumps between year 1 and year 2. It's experience that you can apply in an off season. It's the confidence from the success you had before. And I think Jakari Harris is kind of the face of it on this team. CJ Cox is not far behind. Now, bear in mind, Jakari Harris is not a starter right now. He's one of their better players, obviously, one of their best players. He's going to be a really important player for them this year. But as of right now, he is not a starter. I don't anticipate Purdue running to change its starting lineup anytime soon. But if there was any slippage whatsoever by CJ Cox, you saw last night what he held off to maintain his starting position. So that speaks volumes about CJ Cox too.
Yeah.
So yeah, both of those guys have made that year 1 to year 2 jump in a big way. And they're going to be really important players for Purdue this year. And they're going to be foundational players for Purdue from here on out after this season.
You talked about, the defense and staying in front of the ball and all of that. And you also wrote on goldenblack.com about the elements that Daniel Jacobson brings to the table. Not just, tall man is tall, like the obvious stuff, but a guy that can really change the dynamic for them defensively. And then as a fast break starter on offense with how he can impact and alter shots at the rim. How big of an impact are you expecting when we talk about what he can do?
Well, he is pretty tall. We talk about just he's not good because he's tall, but he really is tall.
He's tall. He's a big dude.
He's very tall. No, I think Purdue, I think I said in my video last night, you could have held a broomstick up in the middle of the lane last year and blocked more shots than Purdue's players did last year because you just didn't have it. It wasn't part of what they could do as soon as Daniel Jacobson got hurt. Now you'll block a shot or two a week, whereas last year it was block a shot or two a month, if that. And that's probably shortchanging it. I think Purdue will block more shots than that a week. But block shots create transition opportunities offensively. Defensive rebounds create transition opportunities offensively. When you have the best point guard in the country and a guy who can flip a court, in the blink of an eye, you want to get the ball as decisively as possible. You want that quick change off a block. You want that, that decisive defensive rebound and immediate outlet pass. And I think between Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson, you're going to get a lot of both of those things. And with Daniel Jacobson, the length changes shots, and change shots mean bad shots. typically, and bad shots are typically easily defensive reboundable. I think his 2 blocks last night didn't fully tell the story of his impact defensively. Purdue last season, offensively, was a black hole finishing around the rim by the people who weren't Trey Kaufman-Moran and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, the high-gravity people who create easy opportunities for other people. Had Purdue had a higher efficiency capability around the basket, they were leaving 6 to 8 points a game probably uncashed in. And I think now Daniel Jacobson brings the lob dunk back to Purdue in half-court offense. I think he and Clough both bring offensive rebounding back to Purdue, much more so than they experienced last year. And I think there's just so much productivity there to be cashed in on now that, might not necessarily be reflected by what everybody talks about in terms of Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Moran and Fletcher Lawyer and 3-point shooting and, most efficient offense in the country, things like that. There is still upside in this offensive profile for Purdue, and it might not be the sexiest stuff, but it is really important. And it starts with rim protection. It starts with defensive rebounding. And in a lot of ways, it's going to start with Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson. The block shot is essentially a steal, and steals are fast breaks more often than not. And I think you're going to see those guys really make Purdue's offense better while making their defense better.
You can see and hear Brian on Gold and Black's postgame football coverage. We will have him on the postgame show, of course, following some of the remaining games here in November, as long as it doesn't bump up against basketball. But most importantly, now we get wall-to-wall hoops as the season is upon us. So if you're not already, you'll want to be a Gold and Black subscriber for all of Brian's hoops thoughts at goldandblack.com. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you again soon, and hopefully no cabbages or cabbage-related activities at the Neubert household.
I think eggs are too expensive now to throw at people's houses, right?
It's just willy-nilly, just chuck them at things.
What's the new egg? What's something that's really cheap that you can just use for vandalism?
And peels paint off? Yeah, we used to sometimes do toothpaste, too, on cars. But even that's gotten a little bit pricey.
No. Yeah. When it's really super cold out, like freezing cold, you know what you do if you want to be a real, something I can't say on the air. Get a gummy bear, lick the gummy bear, and stick it to somebody's windshield.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, if I get into a time machine and become 13 again, I will start licking some gummy bears. And
I did that last week.
Yeah, right. We better let you go before we honestly get in trouble here. Yeah. So, Brian, thank you, and we'll talk football and basketball with you here again soon. That's our buddy Brian Neubert giving you tips how to vandalize things. That's also, not only do we talk men's basketball and football, we also talk about teenage angst, I guess. With that, thank you for listening to Gold and Black Radio, and thank you to our tremendous sponsors. If they want to continue being sponsors, we would appreciate that. Our presenting sponsor is Academy Sports and Outdoors, as well as Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill, and Ripple & Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn by Sand Valley Resort with cozy accommodations and farm-to-table dining. Sand Valley is where adventure and connection come together. Book your winter escape today at sandvalley.com. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. And, of course, you can leave a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Be awesome if you left a 5-star review and a comment as well. We would really appreciate it. Thanks for the vandalism. Whatever you want to put in the comment, you can go ahead and do that. And don't forget to enable alerts as we upload new content just about every day, especially now with the crossover, right? So you have football and basketball converging at once. Goldandblack.com. Join the biggest Purdue community if you're not already a part of it. We got a special promo code just for you. PU1 at checkout. PU1. Get 2 months of your monthly Gold and Black subscription for just $1. PU1 at checkout at goldandblack.com. You get Brian, you get Tom, you get Dub, you get Carm, you get Knucklehead Central, you get Allen, you get everything at goldandblack.com. Definitely worth it as a Purdue fan. It'll be the Boilers and Wolverines postgame show when we next talk to you on these same channels. Gold and Black Radio returns on Tuesday. So we'll see you then. Have a happy and safe Halloween weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon right here on Gold and Black Radio.